Hello, welcome to my very first tutorial. Tonight I was just kind of thinking that I would start off with just a simple explanation of yarns that you would use. When I very first learned how to crochet, of course I had to go to the store and buy a skein of yarn to teach myself with, and once I got in the yarn aisle I was really confused by a lot of the different yarns. I didn't realize that there was so many different kinds and that there was like different things on the labels that I didn't know what they meant. So I just kind of wanted to do a little simple thing. If any of you are thinking about starting to crochet but you feel intimidated because you don't know anything about the yarn, that's what I'm gonna do. So let's start off with this skein of yarn. A skein is just like the unit of yarn. This is how the yarn is sold. There's all sorts of different sizes of skeins. For instance, this is like a smaller skein. There's like a skein over here of cotton yarn. So they're all sorts of shapes and sizes. And this is like your basic yarn that you would want to start with. This is a size 4, which is pretty standard. You use that for most projects. It's considered acrylic worsted yarn. So this is considered worsted weight yarn. You can tell here it says no dye lot. So this is a value brand. So most of the time when you buy a value brand skein like this, there's going to be no dye lot. Like it's made in a factory. They produce, they mass produce it. So there really is no dye lot. So that really doesn't come into play at all when you're using one of these skeins, which is nice. If you see here on this smaller skein, this is more of like a specialty yarn, and this number is actually the dye lot of this yarn. So if you're making a large project, it's often recommended that you use yarn that's all from the same dye lot so that there's no variation in the coloring. I have made large projects with some that were from a different dye lot. I haven't really noticed a difference, so it's really up to you. It's your preference. But like I said, these beginner skeins here, which I have, most of my collection is this kind of yarn. So you can just make so many things with it. You can make anything really. So anywho, as you see, I have like a few different colors here. So I just kind of wanted to show you the variation between like these 3 skeins. And then you look at something like this and you're like, wow, that's so cool looking. But this is completely different to work with than this. So, seeing something in the fabric store that you're like, oh my God, I love that, I want to make something out of it, and actually making something with it is a different story. So definitely, when you're first starting out, use something like this, a simple yarn. It's just easier to work with. It's easier to practice with. It's not really going to show its wear like one of the fancier yarns would if you are practicing and then pulling out and practicing and pulling it out. So sorry, I had to stop there. I had a really immature laugh at that last sentence. Okay, so this is also a worsted weight yarn. That's a value yarn. But this is called variegated yarn. So basically, variegated yarn is just a bunch of different colors mixed in together. So as you crochet, the yarn changes. So as you can see, I'm pulling it out, and damn it, the yarn is changing colors. So that is variegated yarn. You could also use that if you were starting to crochet for the very first time. You could use variegated yarn. The only thing that's a little troubling is you don't want to use like a very dark color when you first start, because it can be kind of difficult to see exactly what you're doing as far as like the anatomy of the stitch. So I recommend starting out with a brighter color, like a yellow, or even like this coral would be okay. Just try and stay away from like darker colors, like a dark purple or dark, like a black or dark blue when you're very first starting, just until you get the hang of it. That's just my recommendation. So another type of yarn is this cotton yarn. And this is actually a pretty large, just adjusting my camera here. It's a pretty large skein of cotton yarn. They have much smaller ones, but I was using this for something that I need a lot of. So this is basically just made out of cotton. So it's absorbent, and you can use it to make dishcloths and coasters and all sorts of things that you want to hold its shape after getting wet. So that's what cotton yarn is good for. There's also what they call sock weight yarn, which is also kind of considered like baby weight yarn. It's, like this yarn is a number 4, the label. Sock weight is a number 3. So it's a little bit finer than this. And so a lot of people use it for baby blankets. A lot of people refer to it as like baby weight yarn. And then this skein that I was showing you before, this is a super bulky yarn. So with this, you have to use a much larger hook in order to make anything with it, because it's just a larger yarn. So your stitches are going to be larger. You have to use a larger hook. Things work up faster with a super bulky, but you can also mimic a super bulky if you don't have a super bulky at home. And let's say that you find a pattern that you really like, but it calls for a size 6 yarn. You can also take 2 skeins of the size 4, the regular yarn, and you can crochet with both of them together with the same size hook that you would use on a super bulky, and it will work up the same way. So that's pretty cool. Like if you wanted to use 2 different colors and make a blanket, I've actually done that a few times. It kind of looks cool with 2 contrasting colors together, or 2 colors, like for a baby, 2 pastel colors or something like that. So that's just a few things that you can do with different yarns, and a few different things about the yarn. You'll notice that on the label, it also tells you what size crochet hook to use and what size knitting needles to use. So I recommend for your first project to just, if you're kind of just going into it like, I just want to try it and see if I like it, I would buy the size hook that's on there, which is the I9 or a 5.5 millimeter. And I would just buy 1 hook. I prefer the aluminum hooks, but that's just my preference. They have plastic ones, they have wooden ones. There's like ones that are made out of like a plasticky type resin. And then there's also the more expensive hooks, like the clover hooks, hooks that have like a handle on them and are like more of a fancier hook for the comfort level. But when you're first starting out, if you just want to kind of see how you like it, it's really your preference. You can get whatever kind of hook you want. I recommend going with this one and just kind of trying it out and seeing what you like. And then if you really like it and want to stick with it, you can always buy, some better hooks or, a whole set of hooks. It's really up to you. So I hope that maybe you've learned something from this video. I know I probably started rambling a couple times. Sorry about that. But at any rate, have a good night, and thank you for watching my yarn tutorial.